Brie Danielson, it's been a long time that we've been able to do one of these together, and very interesting circumstances to bring us together. We're here in London, Wembley Stadium, for what could possibly be Bryan's final match. How are you feeling about everything?
It's emotional. You know, it's crazy because coming to London and to see Bryan in the ring is always exciting. And the kids and I are so excited to watch him live. But at the same time, tonight there's a lot that's going on. Just in my mind and my heart, I feel like I've been at this place before with Bryan. You know, tonight we could either leave this arena, I guess either way, in tears. It's going to be tears of happiness to see him as the first time ever in his career as an AEW champion.
Yeah.
Or it'll be another time when I have to see Bryan not having the opportunity to make a decision to retire to, once again, being forced to retire.
There's so much on the line for Bryan, putting his career on the line. We all know that this is his final year as a full-time in-ring competitor. What are the conversations that you guys have had at home? He's talked about it a little bit, about just, you know, where you guys have been on it. And this is the final pro wrestling contract that he is going to sign. What have those conversations looked like for you guys?
I mean, coming from a mother and his wife, I just care so much about his body, his neck. You know, and every time I see him out there, every week I watch, I'm just like, oh, Bryan, your neck. And so it's the biggest thing. The conversations is his health. But coming from someone who used to wrestle, I look at Bryan's heart and I just see his passion, his love. And I can't imagine him ever not wrestling again.
I don't think any of us can.
No.
I can't imagine Bryan not being around, what that means for like the culture of pro wrestling.
Right.
It's Bryan. He is really the backbone and like the heartbeat of professional wrestling. I can't imagine him not being here. But kind of what you said is like, I watch Bryan's matches and I watch Bryan getting ready for his matches. And I'm always thinking about you and like and your kids and you guys watching it, because I know what that feels like to watch your husband. You know what his body feels like better than anybody else does. We get to hear little snippets of it and, you know, you might see him walking a certain way or whatever. You know what that's like. So when I'm watching him, I'm thinking about what that's like for you. Talk to me about what that's been like to kind of watch his body kind of breaking down on him in the last little while.
Right. Well, you know, it's funny because we'll always make a joke like, oh, we're getting old and the aches and the pains. But I'm also like, Bryan, at 43 years old, you shouldn't be feeling this much pain.
Yeah.
And that's where I get worried. And I will say, compared to a lot of people, my husband takes such great care of his body.
Yeah.
I mean, he does so many things, you know, outside of the ring to make sure he's in the best shape he can be. He feels good. But at the same time, I do see his body breaking down. And it's hard when you come home and you have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. And let me tell you, Buddy is not an easy 4-year-old. So when Daddy walks through the door, you know, it's not the American Dragon, it's Daddy. And it's their time to wrestle with him. And when he's feeling, you know, these aches and pains and it's hard for him to play with his kids, it's when you start to think like, should I be doing this anymore?
It's hard. And I mean, I can see a lot of those similar things with John. I can see when he comes home and whether he's got cuts on his body or lumps, bumps, whatever, to watch that reaction of like getting out of bed and moving a little bit slower or like mentally having to like slide into like dad mode instead of like, I'm a wrestler that needs to like take a minute. That's a really hard spot to be in, to juggle both of those things.
For sure. I mean, I remember, like, he and I will always talk about before kids, when you got off the road, you couldn't wait to, like, go get your favorite snack. And, like, that was it. You hibernated until you were back on the road.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, it's crazy. And I'll admit, when I'm on alone parent duty, I can't wait for him to get home to help.
Yeah.
When I see him walk through that door, I feel bad. I'm like, okay, wait, Thursday needs to be your chill day, but I would really love some help.
I know. It's really hard to juggle those two things. You know, hearing Bryan, you know, he just said on Dynamite that he was going to leave his soul in that ring. I think that we can also both agree that our husbands perhaps have a mistress called professional wrestling. How do you kind of juggle that too, of like the passion that Bryan has for professional wrestling versus keeping his health in check, maybe slowing down and doing matches a different way, changing up his style a little bit, as he seems to continue to say that he's going to do, yet here we are.
I mean, Renee, I literally, after every match I watch, I will send him a picture of the kids. I don't even write anything because I'm like, I thought we were going to take it back a little bit and be safe. But I will say this. I fell in love with him 12 years ago because of his passion, his determination, and his love for wrestling. It was so nice to be with someone and have, like, this business, we have a different language we speak, and we get excited about things that nobody else understands. I mean, I've been on countless dinners with my friends. They're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, I need to call my husband. And we'll sit in bed and have all these ideas of how we can change a storyline or whatever it may be. And that's when I look at him, I'm like, I know your love, I know your passion, and I will never take that away. And I know the kids will never want to take it away. And that's why tonight I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know which way I'll be cheering. Because it's like, yes, I've always wanted my husband to be home more, but at the same time, I've been with him and all we've ever known together is wrestling, and I just don't know if I want to see that end for him.
I mean, you have seen that for him before. You've seen him have this taken away from him, not on his own terms. This time, things are on his own terms. What does your life look like without professional wrestling in it?
I mean, I feel like I'll have more energy.
So we say.
Right, I know. You know what I think is always a beautiful thing, and I've experienced this a couple years ago, is just like being able to evolve and transition into a new chapter in your life. And Bryan and I actually chatted because I'm like, okay, we're not going to be sick of each other, right? Because for a decade we've been missing each other. But he and I, like, we'll talk about like all the gardening things we're gonna do. I mean, I feel like we talk like older people. We're like, yay, Home Depot, and like, bed at 9. But we do it. There's like so many things as a couple and as a family we've wanted to do that we've never done. Because, for him, when you say, let's travel somewhere, like, that doesn't sound fun. And so, like, definitely, like, we daydream about like different campsites and little
things you can
do-it-yourself
check off
projects.
your list. For Bryan to walk away from professional wrestling on his terms this time, how do you think that that's going to affect the sport?
I feel like you and I both have been around for a long time, that we've seen legends leave, and there's always at first this hole missing. Like, I really feel like, I don't know, it's like you walk backstage and it feels like ghost at times. Because I'll remember different people and who I'd go ask for advice, right? And you just see walking through it and make it feel magical. And I think there will be a huge hole here at AEW, but at the same time, I feel like Bryan has coached so many guys here, and his presence lives through so many of them. And I feel like we're gonna see it. And I always knew, like, when someone left the locker room, it was your opportunity to step up. And your chance to just really take the reins and make yourself a bigger star. And I think we're gonna see that.
So the people that are obviously kind of chomping on the bit to take that moment, Swerve Strickland being that guy, making this very personal with Bryan, talking about you, talking about Birdie, talking about Buddy. What has that been like to hear the venom that he's been spewing towards your guys' family?
I mean, we've all known I'm known to punch a couple men in my life. It's hard to hear. And I get fired up and want to do something, but I look at my husband and I know he will take care of Swerve. And so there's no doubt in my mind that his karma is coming. And I'm excited I actually get to be front row to see it.
Yes. This version of Bryan in AEW, he kind of spoke about it with me before, about not being nervous for his matches anymore. This is sort of his like second lease on his professional wrestling life. What's your take on the version of the American Dragon that we get in AEW?
I mean, it has been, it's just been incredible the last 3 years to watch him. And I loved watching him before, but I've truly have felt Bryan here. And I see the excitement. I was with him when he was frustrated, when he felt like he wasn't being heard. And he has been nothing but heard here. And he has done everything he's wanted to do. And I honestly feel like that's why Bryan is at a point where he feels like he can actually walk away from pro wrestling because he has been so fulfilled the last 3 years.
Yeah.
He's been surrounded by all the people he loves. He has gotten in that ring with people he's been dying to wrestle. And so he finally feels like he can walk away and be satisfied. And that just says so much.
I so feel that same thing because I remember before John came here, I knew a version of John. And to see this version of him that like I knew existed,
Right.
but to see that version come to life and start to sparkle and shine again and fall back in love with professional wrestling the way that John did, it was so amazing to see that that full transformation from him. It's so, so cool. All right, any final predictions for Bryan and Swerve? I mean, I know you obviously must have some thoughts, but anything that you want to say to Bryan and or Swerve before he heads in for this final match that could be his final professional wrestling match?
One thing I told Bryan is I was like, you know, we all flew out here because we're not hoping this is your last match. I'm like, we all know your journey is coming to an end, but it doesn't have to come to an end tonight. So when you go out there, fight hard. Fight so hard because I think it would be pretty badass for your kids to see you become a champion. But, you know, I know your heart will lead you, and it will tonight. And there's no doubt in my mind that Bryan's gonna walk out a champion. I truly believe it. And then after that, I don't know how much light there is at the end of the tunnel. But
It's starting to dim on us. We do know that. I mean, that's a fact. That is a fact.
And if it is tonight, then what a beautiful ending to his story.
Absolutely. Well, Brie, thank you so much. I'm so
you, Renee.
happy that you're here in London.
I know.
And of course, best of luck to Bryan. I'm really excited to see what happens.
Thank you.